The ancient wooden floors of the dojo creaked under the weight of anticipation. Every seat in the modest training hall was filled, with spectators standing 3 deep along the walls, their eager eyes fixed on the center mat where today's exhibition would unfold. The air was thick with the scent of incense and sweat, mingling with whispered conversations and nervous laughter. Children clutched their parents' hands while serious-faced students in crisp white gis sat cross-legged at the edge of the performance area, backs straight as arrows. In the far corner, partially obscured by shadow, stood Jason Statham. Unlike the polished Hollywood image most recognized, he appeared almost ordinary today: weathered jeans, a faded navy Henley that had seen better days, and scuffed leather boots. His trademark stubble was heavier, his posture relaxed yet somehow alert, like a predator at rest. No one had noticed him slip in through the side entrance 10 minutes earlier. That's exactly how he wanted it. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests of the Watanabe School of Classical Combat, a booming voice cut through the murmurs. Sensei Riku Watanabe strode confidently to the center of the mat, his movements practiced and theatrical. His black gi was immaculate, the red dragon embroidery on his back catching the light as he turned to face the crowd. At 37, Riku was the picture of martial prowess, chiseled physique, piercing eyes, and the coiled energy of someone who knew exactly how dangerous they were. Then, as Riku scanned the room during his introduction, his eyes locked with Jason's. The sensei's speech faltered momentarily, so brief that only the most observant would notice. A slow, predatory smile spread across his face. Well, well, Riku's voice dropped an octave, becoming intimate yet loud enough for all to hear. It seems Hollywood has sent us a representative today. Don't miss what happens next. Hit subscribe, smash that like button, and comment below telling us which country you're watching from. The confrontation is just beginning. Well, if it isn't Jason Statham himself, Riku announced, his voice cutting through the dojo like a blade. The man who punches bad guys on green screens for a living. The crowd's reaction was instantaneous. Nervous laughter rippled through the room as all eyes darted between the martial arts star and the Hollywood action hero. Jason's expression remained unchanged, his blue eyes locked on Riku with an intensity that made several students shift uncomfortably. The sensei, emboldened by the audience reaction, strode closer to where Jason stood. Perhaps our distinguished guest would care to demonstrate some of those fancy movie moves. Riku's mock bow dripped with contempt. Or maybe a stunt double should handle this for you. The tension in the room thickened. A young woman in the third row whispered to her friend, "This is getting ugly fast," as she positioned her phone for a better recording angle. Social media would explode within minutes. Jason finally moved, rolling his shoulders almost imperceptibly as he took a single step forward. "I didn't come here for this," he said, voice low and measured, carrying to every corner of the suddenly silent dojo. "But if you insist on making a spectacle." He paused, the weight of unspoken threat hanging in the air. Riku's smile faltered for just a moment before returning twice as wide. "The mat doesn't lie, Hollywood. Shall we see what you're really made of?" The gathering crowd formed a perfect circle around the mat, like spectators at a modern gladiatorial arena. Nestled in the heart of Little Tokyo, the Watanabe Dojo was notorious among martial arts circles, not for excellence but for spectacle. The walls, adorned with exaggerated trophies and dramatically lit photographs of Riku defeating opponents, told the story of a man who had built his reputation on humiliation rather than honor. Riku Watanabe, at 35, had cultivated a carefully curated image. His Instagram boasted 300,000 followers who tuned in for his weekly challenger takedowns, videos where visiting martial artists were invariably embarrassed and dismissed. 3 weeks earlier, he'd gone viral for publicly dismantling a Korean Taekwondo champion, adding showboating flourishes that had nothing to do with technique and everything to do with views. What Riku didn't know, what most people didn't know, was that Jason's connection to this place ran deeper than anyone realized. 20 years ago, before Fast and Furious, before the transporter, Jason had trained under Master Hiroshi Tanaka in Osaka. The same Master Hiroshi who had initially trained Riku before the young student's ego had forced the old master to expel him. Now, as Jason slowly stepped onto the mat, he wasn't just accepting a challenge, he was closing a circle 15 years in the making. Jason's presence at the dojo that afternoon wasn't coincidental. 3 days earlier, he'd received a text from Marcus Chen, his former stunt coordinator from The Expendables 2. Marcus's son, Kevin, a promising 12-year-old with quiet determination, had earned his brown belt under Riku's instruction. The boy idolized his teacher, unaware of the man's true character. His demonstration is Saturday, Marcus had written. He'd be over the moon if you showed up. Jason had arrived unannounced, without security or managers, just a man honoring a promise to a friend. He'd slipped in through the side entrance, baseball cap low over his eyes, hopping to watch Kevin's performance without causing a stir, but Riku had spotted him immediately. What no one in that dojo understood was the connection running deeper than Hollywood contracts. 23 years earlier, before Jason had landed his first significant role, he'd spent 18 months training under Master Hiroshi Tanaka in a remote mountain dojo outside Kyoto. The same Master Hiroshi who had expelled Riku after catching him using excessive force against junior students. Jason remembered Master Hiroshi's words, "True strength requires no audience." The irony wasn't lost on him as phone cameras captured every moment of this unexpected reunion with his former dojo brother. Riku's confidence swelled as he felt the energy of his dojo behind him. With theatrical precision, he launched into a series of kata demonstrations, each movement deliberately exaggerated, his gi snapping with every turn. His students watched in rapt attention as he executed a flying spinning heel kick that would have looked impressive in any action film. Landing with perfect balance, he turned to face Jason with a predatory smile. "This is real martial arts, Hollywood," Riku announced, his voice carrying across the now silent dojo. "Not the watered-down choreography they teach you on set." He gestured to a wall lined with trophies and certificates. "Every one of those represents someone who thought they could step onto my mat and leave with their dignity. Care to join the collection?" The crowd's reaction was mixed, nervous laughter from the younger students, uncomfortable silence from the adults who recognized the dangerous territory this was entering. A middle-aged woman in the third row whispered to her husband, "This is getting out of hand," as she nervously clutched her program. Jason remained motionless, his eyes never leaving Riku's. The tension between them was like a physical presence in the room, ancient, personal, beyond the understanding of most observers. A young black belt near the front row, sensing something the others didn't, took a step back from the mat's edge. "I hear you've got a stunt double for everything," Riku continued, circling the mat like a shark. "Even drinking coffee, right? Because real fighters can't afford to break their precious fingers." He stopped directly across from Jason. "Or maybe you're just worried about your insurance premiums." Jason's gaze drifted past Riku to the corner where Kevin Chen stood, the boy's eyes wide with conflicting emotions, embarrassment, disappointment, confusion. The child had idolized both men for different reasons, and now his heroes were colliding in the worst possible way. "The boy deserves better than this," Jason finally said, his voice carrying just enough to reach the first few rows. "Your students deserve better." Riku's jaw tightened. "My students deserve to see what happens when Hollywood fantasy meets dojo reality." Something shifted in Jason's demeanor, subtle but unmistakable. The casual observer might have missed it, but Master Hiroshi would have recognized it instantly, the moment when patience transforms into purpose. "One round," Jason said, removing his watch and placing it carefully on a nearby bench. "No cameras, no showboating." Riku barked a laugh. "In my dojo, I make the rules action star." Jason stepped onto the mat, his movement so fluid it seemed he simply materialized there. "You've been making rules without understanding principles," he said. "That ends today." A hushed murmur swept through the crowd as Jason methodically removed his shoes and placed them neatly at the edge of the mat. His movements were unhurried, deliberate, the actions of a man who had performed this ritual thousands of times before fame ever found him. Riku's confidence visibly wavered for the first time. Something in Jason's quiet preparation had pierced his armor of bravado, but pride pushed him forward as he took his position opposite Jason, bouncing on the balls of his feet, rolling his shoulders, putting on a show for the increasingly uncomfortable audience. "Last chance to walk away," Riku offered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "No shame in admitting you're out of your depth." Jason settled into a stance so basic it seemed almost ordinary, until one noticed the perfect weight distribution, the slight angle of his shoulders, the absolute stillness of his hands. "I'm exactly where I need to be," Jason replied. "Shall we begin?" The atmosphere in the dojo transformed as Jason stepped onto the mat. Time seemed to slow, the fluorescent lights overhead intensified, casting harsh shadows across the polished wood floor. The phones recording from every angle captured what happened next in excruciating detail, footage that would later be analyzed frame by martial arts enthusiasts worldwide. Riku struck first exactly as Jason had anticipated. The dojo master lunged forward with explosive speed, launching a textbook-perfect flying knee aimed directly at Jason's solar plexus, a move designed more for spectacle than efficiency. The crowd gasped collectively, several students instinctively flinching at the aggression. For a heartbeat, it seemed the Hollywood star might be overwhelmed by the sheer ferocity of the attack. But Jason's body responded before conscious thought intervened. 23 years of muscle memory took control as he pivoted 45 degrees, his torso rotating just enough for Riku's knee to whistle past him. The movement was so economical, so precise that several viewers would later claim they'd missed it entirely. In the same fluid motion, Jason's right hand delivered a short, compact strike to Riku's floating ribs. The impact wasn't dramatic, no theatrical sound effects or exaggerated follow-through, but the dojo master's sudden gasp told the story. "First contact," whispered a black belt near the far wall, his eyes widening in professional appreciation. Riku stumbled backward, momentarily disoriented, his rehearsed sequence of attacks disrupted. Something unfamiliar flashed across his face, doubt. He circled Jason warily now, pride compelling him forward while instinct screamed retreat. The crowd's energy shifted. The teenagers who had been snickering just moments earlier fell silent, phones raised higher to capture what was quickly becoming a masterclass rather than a humiliation. "Come on then," Riku snarled, desperation creeping into his voice. "Show me something real." Jason remained centered, hands loose at his sides, breathing steady. Not a stance found in competition, but something older, more fundamental, the posture of someone who had long ago transcended formal techniques. Riku attacked again, this time with a blistering combination, front kick transitioning to spinning back fist, followed by a hooking roundhouse. Each strike would have featured prominently in his viral videos, movements designed to impress rather than finish. Jason slipped the first, parried the second, and ducked the third with such minimal movement that several observers would later argue whether he'd moved at all. Then Jason countered. 3 strikes in rapid succession, a palm heel to Riku's sternum, an elbow trap that hyperextended the dojo master's right arm, and a sweeping leg hook that collapsed Riku's base entirely. The sequence took less than 2 seconds. Riku crashed to the mat with a dull thud that resonated through the floorboards. "Get up," Jason said quietly, stepping back to allow his opponent space. Not a taunt, but an instruction. Confusion rippled through the audience. This wasn't how fights went in dojos like this. There should be celebrating, showboating, at least some acknowledgement of dominance. Instead, Jason stood patiently, waiting for Riku to regain his footing. Rage replaced embarrassment as Riku scrambled upright. Technique abandoned him as he charged forward with wild haymaker punches, the desperate flailing of a drowning ego. Jason weaved through the onslaught, absorbing one glancing blow to his shoulder before countering with surgical precision. A short uppercut to Riku's solar plexus folded him forward, followed by a knee strike that just barely missed his chin. "He's toying with him," an older man in the third row murmured. "He could end this any time." As if hearing the comment, Jason shifted strategies. When Riku lunged again, Jason caught his wrist in a textbook Aikido redirection, amplifying the dojo master's momentum and sending him sprawling across the mat. In one continuous motion, Jason followed, securing a dominant position atop his opponent. For 3 heartbeats, the entire room held its breath. Jason could deliver a fight-ending blow, legally, justifiably, and no one would question it. Instead, he stood, backing away once more. "Final chance," he said, voice barely above a whisper. Humiliated beyond reason, Riku charged one last time. Jason sidestepped with practiced ease, positioned himself perfectly behind his opponent, and delivered a precisely measured elbow strike to the base of Riku's skull, not hard enough to cause permanent damage, but more than sufficient to end the confrontation. Riku collapsed face first onto the mat, consciousness temporarily departing. A thin trickle of blood from his nose spread slowly across the white surface, the only color in a suddenly monochrome world. The dojo remained frozen in stunned silence, no cheers, no applause, just the muted sound of dozens of people collectively processing what they'd witnessed. A martial arts demonstration had transformed into something far more profound, a lesson in the difference between spectacle and substance. For 30 breathless seconds, the only sound in the dojo was the soft wheezing of Riku's labored breathing. The former champion lay sprawled on the mat, a thin crimson trail from his nose creating a stark contrast against the pristine white surface. Not a single spectator moved. Phones remained raised, recording the aftermath of what could only be described as a martial arts clinic rather than a fight. The expressions on the faces around the room told a story of collective shock, worldviews shattered, certainties upended, and a newfound respect bordering on reverence. Is he okay?" A woman whispered from the third row, her voice carrying through the silence like a thunderclap. A black belt near the edge of the mat nodded slowly, never taking his eyes off Jason. "He's fine, his ego isn't." The stillness broke when a lone figure in the back began to clap slow, deliberate applause that echoed against the wooden walls. Then another joined, and another, until the entire room filled with a rhythmic acknowledgement of what they'd witnessed. Not celebration, but appreciation, the kind reserved for witnessing something rare and profound, like a perfect sunset or a masterful symphony. Jason stood motionless at the center of this storm of attention, his expression unchanged, his breathing calm and controlled. Then, with the same economy of movement that had characterized his fighting, he extended his hand toward the fallen instructor. The gesture spoke volumes, no triumph, no gloating, just professional courtesy. Riku stared at the offered hand for what felt like an eternity. His eyes, once blazing with arrogance, now registered confusion, shame, and finally, a dawning comprehension. With visible effort, he grasped Jason's hand, wincing as he was pulled to his feet. Blood smeared across his upper lip, his once immaculate gi now disheveled and stained. Jason leaned close, his voice pitched for Riku alone, though the front row caught fragments. "Showmanship attracts views. Mastery creates legacy." The defeated sensei nodded once, unable to maintain eye contact. His shoulders, previously thrown back in perpetual display, now curved inward protectively. The transformation was palpable, from peacock to wounded bird in less than 5 minutes. As Jason turned away, his gaze landed on Kevin Chen, the 12-year-old brown belt whose demonstration had brought him here in the first place. The boy stood frozen in place, eyes wide with conflicting emotions, awe, uncertainty, and something deeper, a question forming but unasked. Jason approached him with gentle steps, stopping at a respectful distance. The entire dojo held its breath again, watching this unexpected epilogue unfold. "Your reverse side kick has excellent form," Jason said, his voice carrying just enough for those nearby to hear. "But you're dropping your guard during transition. Try keeping your left hand higher." The boy's face transformed from shock to pure radiance. He bowed formally, deeper than necessary, struggling to find words. "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." Marcus Chen, Kevin's father, stood at the edge of the viewing area, hand pressed against his mouth in disbelief. The significance wasn't lost on him. His son had just received personal instruction from a martial artist whose skill transcended Hollywood perception. "Practice with purpose, not for applause," Jason added, resting a calloused hand briefly on the boy's shoulder. "The quietest warriors often stand the longest." As Jason retrieved his jacket from the bench, the crowd parted instinctively, creating a pathway to the exit. No one spoke, no one approached for autographs or selfies. The atmosphere had shifted from entertainment to something approaching reverence, as if they'd witnessed not a celebrity appearance but a visiting master from another era. At the doorway, Jason paused briefly, surveying the dojo one final time. His eyes met Riku's across the distance. No words passed between them, but a message was conveyed nonetheless, a challenge to be better, to teach better, to embody the principles rather than just perform them. Then, without fanfare, Jason Statham stepped out into the Los Angeles afternoon, where traffic continued its eternal flow and pedestrians passed by, utterly unaware that inside those walls, a legend had just been born, not through grand declarations or staged violence, but through the quiet authority of earned mastery. Sunlight had barely begun to fade when the first clip appeared online. 27 seconds, shot from a low angle near the corner of the mat, capturing the precise moment Jason's elbow connected with Riku's neck. By nightfall, the video had accumulated over 2 million views. By dawn, the counter rolled past 17 million. What had transpired within those humble dojo walls had transcended physical space, becoming a digital phenomenon that crossed continents and cultures within hours. Jason Statham School's arrogant dojo master in 90 seconds became the dominant headline. Every platform from YouTube to Twitter erupted with side-by-side analysis, slow-motion breakdowns, and frame-by-frame examinations of Jason's footwork. Combat sports analysts who typically dismissed celebrity martial arts as theatrical fluff suddenly found themselves grudgingly impressed. "That's not choreography," commented a renowned MMA coach on his popular podcast. "That's decades of muscle memory responding to threat without conscious thought. Statham moves like someone who trained when no one was watching, not when everyone was." The martial arts community embraced the footage with particular fervor. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts shared the clip with captions like, "This is why humility matters more than any belt color." Karate dojos in Japan circulated the video among students as a case study in efficient movement. Even Olympic Taekwondo champions weighed in with admiration for Jason's precision and control. "The most impressive part wasn't the takedown," wrote a three-time gold medalist. "It was his restraint. He could have caused serious damage multiple times but chose discipline instead of destruction." What resonated most with viewers wasn't just the physical dominance but the stark contrast in philosophies, Riku's performative showmanship versus Jason's understated mastery. Comment sections became philosophical forums, with older practitioners particularly drawn to discussions about martial arts' deeper principles. Meanwhile, Riku Watanabe attempted damage control through a hastily recorded video titled "Setting the Record Straight: My Experience with Jason Statham." Filmed in his living room with visible bruising still darkening his left cheekbone, he spoke for 12 minutes about misunderstandings and mutual respect between professionals. The internet's response was merciless. "You didn't lose to a celebrity," read the most upvoted comment. "You lost to 20 years of silent dedication that happens to live in a famous body." Another commenter observed, "Notice how Jason hasn't posted a single word about this. That's the difference between someone who fights for validation and someone who simply embodies what fighting should be." Indeed, while Riku struggled to reclaim his narrative through increasingly desperate interviews and explanations, Jason maintained complete digital silence. His Instagram remained unchanged, no mention of the incident, no reposting of viral clips, not even a cryptic reference. This absence of commentary only amplified his mystique, transforming what could have been a fleeting viral moment into something approaching legend. By week's end, martial arts schools across America reported surging enrollment numbers. Parents bringing their children cited the same reason: "We want them to learn that kind of discipline, the quiet kind." By sunrise, the encounter had metamorphosed into digital legend. What happened in that modest dojo transcended physical space, traveling at light speed across digital channels. The initial upload, a shaky 42-second clip captured from the back corner, appeared on Reddit with the title "Jason Statham Teaches Humility Without Words." Within hours, it dominated every platform. "The most beautiful part is how little he moved," commented a retired MMA champion. "That's the difference between fighting for cameras and fighting for survival. Jason wastes nothing, not energy, not movement, not even words." Martial arts communities dissected every moment with scholarly precision. Frame-by-frame analyses appeared alongside professional breakdowns of Jason's biomechanics. What struck viewers most wasn't the physical dominance, but the philosophical statement his actions made, a living embodiment of less is more in a world obsessed with spectacle. "This isn't celebrity martial arts," wrote a prominent Kyokushin master from Osaka. "This is what happens when traditional training meets modern combat application. Hollywood didn't teach him this, decades of discipline did." Riku attempted damage control through a series of increasingly desperate videos. First came understanding what really happened with Jason Statham, filmed in his apartment with visible bruising still darkening his cheekbone. When that backfired spectacularly, he tried "Lessons Learned: My Growth After Sparring a Legend." The internet remained unmoved. "Notice Statham hasn't said a single word about this online," observed a viral comment. "That silence speaks more than Riku's 10 videos combined." The most telling transformation occurred not online but within dojos worldwide. Instructors began emphasizing Statham-style efficiency in their classes. Students who'd previously mimicked flashy cinema techniques now requested fundamentals. The hashtag "respect before attention" became a martial arts rallying cry, emblazoned on training gear and dojo walls across America.